name is Brandon. For those of you that missed it, I oversee the Office of Global Learning. We've been working a lot with our campus colleagues on getting everything ready for your arrival. As you can imagine, because of COVID situation and the need for testing and some people needing vaccination, in addition to having students staying in a couple of different areas of campus, in addition to some students they're staying in a hotel or Airbnb or something during Prepare, and then they'll plan to move into campus housing once Prepare is over, and other students that won't be staying in campus housing at all. So we're trying to accommodate everyone and get everyone the instructions that we need. And like I said before, I think we'll all just have to be patient as we continue, just as the university and Prepare are having to adapt to a changing situation. We also recognize that for our in-person participants, some of you might be traveling, over the next couple of days, or maybe right before Prepare, is supposed to begin, and travel issues come up. And so we're also going to try to be as flexible as possible with those. So, really communication is just going to be the key. We'll be using the Cornell email for communication with everyone. So as things come up, send a note message to the prepare@cornell.edu, and between my colleague Dick Shing and me, we'll be checking that regularly, to respond to questions. And also, if you're, let's say, supposed to have checked in on a certain day and the day ends and you haven't checked in, we'll be in touch over email to try to get in touch with you. And, of course, if something more urgent would come up, and if you have a phone number or another, more urgent way of getting in touch with you, we'll ask for that. But really, email is going to be key over the coming days. Okay. So what I did for all the in-person participants, I sent a couple of messages early this morning, after we got everything finalized with Cornell campus housing yesterday evening, regarding the different arrival instructions. So we got all those kind of figured out, and I sent those off to everyone. And again, those were divided up, just so that we're all aware, those were divided up between people that are going to be staying in campus housing for Prepare and for the fall, people that will be staying in a hotel or somewhere else for Prepare and then moving on to campus for the fall, and people that won't be in campus housing for the fall. And then I also recognize that some people, most people are arriving on the 15th or the 16th. Some people got permission from the residence halls or from campus housing to move in on the 14th as well. We also have, of course, mentors and volunteers that might be on this call, and they're on a little bit of a different schedule. So I'm happy to start taking questions from people. I'm sure there's going to be questions about arrival, maybe questions about Cornell ID, how dining, etc. I'll do my best to answer all of those. There are still a couple of things that we're finalizing with the different colleagues around Cornell. So if there's a question that I'm not able to answer, I'll write that down, and then I can communicate that to the whole in-person group. If there are a lot of questions, or if just a lot of things change, between now and the next couple of days, which again is possible, as Cornell is adapting to changing situations, then I'll see if we want to have another just in-person like this, and I'll schedule it for, sometime around now, kind of early in the morning for Cornell. And so hopefully it'll be good for everyone to join if you want to. So with that, I'll just see, if maybe people have questions, if you want to raise your hand using the Zoom function, and then that way we can make this a little more organized. That'll be easiest for me. I know there is the chat, but I don't know, I guess I'm old school in the sense that it gets really hard for me to kind of keep track of everything happening at once. So if you have questions, go ahead and raise your Zoom hand, and I can call on you and we can start working through those. All right, great. Let me see. Oh, and give me 1 second, Pien. I need to open up. There we go. And then I just have to, so everybody, I have to ask you to unmute. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. If you can, go ahead.
Hi. So this might be like a kind of a direct question, but me and my roommate are deciding to move in on the 19th, at the 10 a.m. section. So I see that it overlaps with one of the activity of prepare that is kind of mandatory. So I'm not sure if whether we're allowed to not go to that session or are we allowed to maybe join afterwards if
Yeah,
you're
so,
meant.
no, great question. And, I think this will come up from people, like in your situation that you're not moving in early, you're staying somewhere else, right, during prepare. You know, the first thing I would say is my recommendation would be is to maybe see if you can move in later that day. We've already asked housing about that and they didn't, express any problem. You just want to send them a note. I know they're getting a lot of notes right now from students saying, hey, I need to adjust my time. If you are moving in at 10 a.m., there's some in-person sessions that we're doing with campus units that I think will be really helpful for you. And then shortly after that, on Thursday, we're all getting on buses to go out to Gannett, which is a natural area. We'll have a barbecue and things. It's a pretty fun time. That we plan should end at about 3:30, 4 o'clock. And then I think that would be a great time for you to actually go ahead and move in then, frankly, so that way you're not missing things. I know you might be coordinating things with your roommate, and so that, might, create other issues. But I think that would be our preference, just because it's easier then to kind of keep track of people. Because then if, people don't show up, then we might be having to hunt around and look for you. If in the end, though, the best way for you is going to be to go ahead and miss that time, at 10, so that you can move in. Our schedule is online, and you can see where we are and at what time. And then, just, go ahead and reintegrate, with us when you're able to. So I'd say try not to miss it if you can, because it's a fun part of prepare. But if you need to, we definitely understand.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Let's see. So then, who do we have next? Xinyu. Let me go ahead and there we go. Oh, Joanne. Hi.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering, like, because I'm moving on August 14th, and I think the dining for prepare begins on August the 15th. So I'm just wondering, like, for that day, on August 14th, where I can really solve my lunch and all these meals, like, what the solutions for them, maybe on campus or out of campus.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's a great question. Because we had asked people, to arrive to prepare, we said that kind of 2 to 6 p.m. Window on Sunday. That's why we're providing dinner and then the meals, after that. But definitely people that are arriving earlier in the day on Sunday, or like you, Joanne, you're arriving on Saturday. In the instructions that I sent this morning, thanks, Rizzo. The instructions that I sent this morning, there's a link in there that says what the dining options are that are going to be provided by Cornell. And so, we'll probably go ahead and resend that to people. But, everyone should have gotten one email from me, and with either, 2 or more attachments. One of the attachments talks about, it's got a big section on testing. It's got a section on move-in, on checking in for prepare, right? And that comes from prepare. The other attachment is from campus housing, Kristen Loparco, and so you'll see her name at the bottom. On that email, they provided a link that will take you to the different options that Cornell Dining is providing. And we might be, and maybe Dixing, if Dixing is on right now, Dixing, between Dixing and I, we can try to add that link to the message, and maybe I'll see if I can hunt that one down.
Yeah, sure.
Right
I can
now
do
as we're
that,
talking.
Brandon. That's not a problem.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dixing. Does that help, Joanne? So yeah, they definitely know that people will be moving in and that they're going to have dining options available. They're going to be more limited, but they'll definitely have options available. All right, let's see. So next we have Jana. Jana, There we go.
Hi. So I actually had two questions. My first one was, it's maybe kind of specific, but since I'm living off campus, do you know when we'd be able, or like what's the procedure for getting our student ID cards? Because I know they're usually given like when you're moving in. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Jana. And provided that you let us know, and I can't pull up the list right now, but I know we've been checking in with people. We've already worked in advance with the university registrar, and they're going to be delivering to us the ID cards of all the students that aren't going to be on campus for the fall semester or for the year, right? So if you're not going to be living in the dorms or the campus housing at all, we're going to have those available for you to pick up when you check in at the Robert Purcell Community Center. So the RPCC will have those available for you. So when you check in for prepare, we can get you your ID card.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah. And then my second question was, so we were given, or when we registered for the program, for the prepare program, we gave like a time slot for when we'd be arriving and for the COVID test. So do we still register on like the Daily Check website, or like sign up for a test during that same period?
Yeah, oops, and hold on one second. Just have to close the window. Yeah, so exactly. And so Jana, just to make sure, and I'll probably ask the same thing of everyone, just to make sure my email got out to everybody. Did you see there's the email I was talking about that has the different sets of instructions? I just want to make sure that you got that. Perfect. So yeah, so what I have in there is how the testing windows will work. So you can go ahead and use that. And really, let's say some people might already be in Ithaca right now, right? And I know some of our mentors or volunteers are in Ithaca already. And frankly, you can go ahead and get tested now if you're already here. Cornell wants to make sure that you've been tested by Cornell, as opposed to a test in New York City, or the test that you'll get before maybe you leave your home country. But really, what we just need is that everyone has had their test and has given enough time for their test to have come back before we begin on Tuesday evening, right? So that's the key thing. We've tried to make it easy for people to say, if you're arriving on August 15th, you'll come in, you'll get tested right away in RPCC, right? And then right after your testing, you'll come to us and you'll check in for prepare. And then depending on your housing, you'll go in one of a couple of different directions. So that we think is the easiest for people. But certainly if someone wants to do testing before then, that's fine. What campus housing has asked for is that people do their testing before they check into housing. Unless you're getting in late at night, and then they've said it's okay for you to go into housing before you get tested, you just have to make sure to get tested the next morning. So in your case, Jana, really you can take a look at the Daily Check, website, see, when a test is available. And if you go and do that, I think they say that test, reservation times are available at 4 p.m. the day before. So if you go on at 4 p.m. today, you might see that tests are available for tomorrow, and you could go ahead and do one of those. Does that help, Jana, answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Let's see. How about Diego? I'll go ahead and unmute you. Oh, sorry, Diego, almost there.
Hi, Brandon.
Hey there, how you doing?
Hi. So Brandon, first off, just want to say thank you for your patience. I know I've been emailing a lot. You've been very helpful thus far. And
Welcome.
my question really comes in two parts. The first is very similar to Jana's, actually. In the case of on-campus students, if we're living on campus in Cornell dorms, can we still get our ID cards same day as prepare?
So Diego, and so I know this one has come up for people. So Diego, remind me, because you're planning to stay off campus for prepare, right? And then
Yes.
come in. Yeah, so what I'm working on right now with housing, and they might have already responded to me, what to do, with students like you, and there's a group of you that, again, are planning to be off campus, but then want their and need their ID, right? But you wouldn't normally get that until the 19th, 20th, or 21st, right? So I've been working with the campus ID people and housing to figure out how we can get your IDs in advance. And the goal is that when you come in to check in for prepare and do your testing at the same time, probably, then we'd be able to give you your ID. So that's the goal. And then I'll just be in touch with you and everyone else in that group just to let you know what the exact protocol is going to be so that you have your ID early, even though you're not going to be moving in until later. Does that sound good?
Yeah, that sounds great. And just to bounce off that, my second question was, I followed your link to the COVID testing on August 15, I believe, and I was signing up for it, but I got a message saying that I can't sign up for it because I'm not in Ithaca. Is that an intentional thing, or is it a bug, or what do I have to do to get around that?
Interesting. Okay, so that's I'll need to follow up with them just to see. I know that they've had to adjust how they do their testing registration. Like they won't let people register for too far in advance just because they have a lot of people that don't follow through because plans change and then they get, they just have empty, testing times. So let me follow up with them. They hadn't told me in advance that that was going to be an issue. So I'll follow up with them and then I can get an email out to everyone, just maybe with an update, just to see. I don't know, Dixing, if if you don't mind, Dixing, just maybe writing on a note, just that I need to follow up on that one. That'd be great, just to keep track of ones that I need to get back to people on. So yeah, Diego, it could end up being that people have to wait until they get here, until they can, register for an appointment for the next day. And if that's the case, we've built in, extra time for prepare to allow that. Also, the testing people, like I said in my message to everyone, they're ready to expedite things, expedite results. So hopefully, that also won't be a problem. So yeah, so more to come, Diego. Great question.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Let's see. Next we have Lily. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. So my bus can't arrive. So it's supposed to arrive, I think, around 4 or 5. And I have housing moving at 5 on the 16th. So I emailed and I'm going to sign up to get my testing at like early as possible Tuesday morning. So hopefully I'm able to attend dinner. I don't know if that'll be possible, but hopefully. But do I have to quarantine until my test comes back?
Yeah, so I guess a couple of things. So the first one, you said that your bus is going to arrive at 4 or 5 p.m. on, what was that, on Monday then, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the way that we have this set up, we kind of have a more reduced window for prepare check-in, and we've kind of artificially reduced our testing check-in as well. The reality is, and I need to make sure, but I believe testing is actually open until 6 p.m. On Monday. We won't be there. We'll be there until 3. Maybe we'll be hanging out for a little bit longer, but we'll probably be gone and we'll be ready Tuesday the next morning. But you should be able to still register for testing, until 6 p.m. on Monday. And so, if you're able to do that, I would definitely recommend to do that. If you're in, and you're able to get to RPCC on time, right? Because then that way you would go ahead and get your testing. And then you should be able to also check in until 8 p.m. actually for your housing. And then you would just check in for prepare the next morning. So that should all work out fine. If that doesn't work out that way, then yeah, you're right. You would go ahead and just do testing first thing the next morning. And what they've told us again is that, as long as you get in first thing, you let them know that your program stat, like in those instructions, then we should be able to get the testing by the end of the day for them. I'm not sure if that's, 4, 5, or 6, but, even if it's 6, the dinner is still going to be open and available. And then you can go ahead and do those evening activities. To your question about quarantine, so Cornell isn't really using the word quarantine, they're saying kind of lay low, right? But really the idea is that, don't be around other people while you're waiting for your test, as much as possible. There still be meals and things that will be available. Again, we'll be in touch with everyone to let you know exactly what the instructions are to go and get meals, especially if you're still waiting for your test. But maintaining social distance, wearing your mask, you'll be in your room, and just waiting until we have those test results before you go ahead and reintegrate with everyone.
Sounds good. Thank you. I have a follow-up question really quickly.
Yeah, sure.
So I signed up for housing at 5 because I should be there by then. Does this mean like I have housing like open from 5 to 6 to check in, or should I be there like promptly at 5, just in case like COVID testing takes a bit long?
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, I think their window, is still open. So I think they want people to try to fit in with their arrival time as much as possible. But even for students that their flight is late or their bus is late and they're not able to get in until later in the night, you'll see in the instructions that I provided that students are still able to get into their housing. You just have to follow special instructions when you go to your building. You'll call your, the resident staff, they'll come and get you at the door, you'll get in, and then you'll probably just check in the next morning. The same thing with your testing. So that should all be just fine. I think everyone should try to follow it as closely as possible, but I think, we all know that stuff comes up and people might have to be late. So there's a system built in to allow for that flexibility.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, Lee. Let's see. Then looks like we have Sarah. Sarah.
Hi, I just have a question about an answer you gave to a previous question. After our COVID test, are we allowed to immediately then move into residence, or do we have to wait for our COVID test to come back before moving into residence?
Yeah, thanks for that, Sarah. That's a great question. So the way that campus wants students to do things for our group is to arrive, get their COVID test, and the COVID tests, are happening in RPCC, right? And prepare check-in is in RPCC, and housing check-in for many students, not all, but many students is also in RPCC. You can do everything in that order. And if there's not a long line, you can do all of that within, half an hour. So that's completely fine. You'll arrive, you'll get tested as soon as you're done with testing. Come visit us at the prepare check-in table if we're still there. And if not, go straight to the housing check-in. They'll check you in, you'll get your ID, your keys, you'll go to your room, and then that's where you'll hang out until, the next day or later in the day until you have your COVID test results, knowing that, of course, using the bathroom, getting food, again, with instructions that we'll provide very soon. So yeah, Sarah, you're able to go ahead and get tested and check into housing right away. And again, if a student is not able to get tested first because the testing is closed already, that's okay for housing. It's not preferred, but that's okay. As long as you go ahead and get tested first thing the next morning. And of course, both from the time that you arrive all the way until you have your test results back, keeping that social distancing, making sure to wear a mask. Does that help, Sarah?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Let's see, any other questions from the group? Anything and everything. It doesn't just have to be arrival related. Yeah, so let's see. Tatiana, go ahead.
Hi, I had a question about vaccinations. So I'm already vaccinated, but I'm looking to try getting vaccinated with the Pfizer vaccine. Do you know if that's like okay to get 2 different vaccines?
Yeah, so what I recommend you can do, there are a couple, so one thing I'll say is around Cornell, there are a couple of different locations with vaccination related information. At this point, all sites will be pointing to Cornell Health because they're the kind of the experts, related to vaccination. So you can search for Cornell Health vaccination, and they actually have a page that's specifically for international students as well. So I recommend to go ahead and take a look at that page. And I wish I had the guidance, the most recent guidance in my memory right now. I don't, just because things have been changing over the couple of months. So I don't want to misquote something. But I know that they do provide guidance in there related to, having a second vaccination, timing. I do know that in general, people are kind of going that route as well. But I definitely say take a look at that page. And then if you have any questions, Cornell Health will have their information right there, their contact information. And so you can let them know maybe, what vaccination you've already had and what your plans are. But I do know that up until now, that has been something that we've said is definitely allowable for students. If you've had a vaccination that is not on definitely if it's not on the WHO list, then you'll need to get that vaccination. But even if you do have a WHO approved vaccine, we do allow students to get the Moderna or the Pfizer vaccine upon arrival. So go ahead and take a look at that Cornell Health International Student Vaccination page, Tatiana, and that should be able to give you the information you need. If not, reach out to Cornell Health. And if still you're not getting the answer, send a note to us at Prepare, and we will hunt that down for you. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, I had like a follow-up question. So like
Sure.
I'm traveling with my father, and he's also looking to get the Pfizer vaccine, but like he's not sure if he can because he's not a New York State resident. So like are like foreigners allowed to get the Pfizer as well?
Yeah, so that's and I haven't I haven't been paying as close attention to that one because I've been so focused on students.
Mhm.
Family members wouldn't be able to get vaccinated through Cornell, right? Through Cornell Health. But what you could do, or your father could do, is take a look at the and here, let me pull it up really quick. It's through Tompkins County. So Tompkins County Health Department. So Cornell is located in Ithaca, and Ithaca is part of the county of Tompkins. And Tompkins County is the organization that is overseeing vaccination for people that live in the county. So I got vaccinated through Tompkins County. And I'm going to go ahead and add this link to the chat. So you have this one. I'm going to go ahead and add it here. And that will provide you information on the current kind of regulations and eligibility requirements for vaccination. So that means you'd be getting your vaccination kind of through the Cornell route because that's available. You don't have to actually. You could go through the Tompkins County route, but I'd recommend going through Cornell. That way it's all kind of within one. And then family members would be, if possible, would be going through Tompkins County. Does that help, Tatiana?
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you so much for answering my question.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thank you. Let's see, now we have Brian. Oh, sorry, Brian. It looks like the unmute button didn't work. Maybe now I think you have to unmute. There we go. Hi there.
Okay, hi. So I have booked an Airbnb on the 14th, but the host asked me to check out before 12 on the 15th. So my question is, am I allowed to move into my dorm before checking in at RPCC?
Yeah, so what we're asking people to do that arrive early on the 15th Testing doesn't start until 2 p.m. And the housing would really wants people to do COVID testing before you check into your housing. Okay, so we've also worked with housing to see if students are able to leave their luggage with RPCC while they're going out and they're getting testing or they're getting vaccination. So, I think what you could do, you could show up to RPCC, let's say at noon, right, at 12:30 or whatever time you get there, and just kind of let the people at the front, know the situation. You might just, it's not that long of a wait, so you might just want to, hey, sit down. There's chairs. It's a very nice space in the RPCC, so you could just kind of take a seat. Or maybe if you're able to leave your luggage with RPCC, and again, we're waiting for confirmation, but I think that's going to be possible, then you could leave your luggage with them. You could go walk around and then just come back at 2 p.m. So that way you can get, tested and then get checked in right away. It might be that housing allows you to check in before you get tested. But, they've really asked us to, ask students to get tested first, then check in.
Understandable. Thank you so much for answering.
Yeah, Brian, you're very welcome. Let's see, any other questions that people have? All right, well, how about this? Looks like we don't have any more questions coming in. Yep, unless I'm missing anybody. Nope, so far. So we'll go ahead and we'll end the session now. If you do have questions, please do write us. If it looks like there are a lot of questions coming in and people would benefit from having another one of these, just in-person sessions, so we can just ask questions in real time, then Dick Shing and I will be in touch over email to schedule one of those and invite people to it, at some point in the next, 1 to 3 days, depending on what comes in. So I hope this was helpful for everyone. Great to see you all, and more soon. Take care, everybody.